Welcome to episode number 168 of the Marine Layer podcast. The Mariners' 2024 season has come to a close, and Lyle and I will give our parting thoughts as we head into the offseason.
Thanks so much for following along all year, guys. We're not done, though. Obviously, we do this thing year-round. We're going to be doing content all through the offseason, so if you want to stay on top of all of it, make sure you're downloading these podcast episodes. If you're listening, rate and review 5 stars. Make sure to do all that on the audio side. If you're watching on YouTube, the best thing you guys can do to support us, just hit that subscribe button. Subscribe. Leave a like, drop a comment, and then on social media, you can check us out on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. On one from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording on Sunday evening, September 29th, after the Mariners' 162nd and final game of the 2024 season. What's the first emotion that comes to mind now that we're done, Lyle?
Sigh of relief. Dude, I need a break. I need a mental health break. Like, that's legitimately my first emotion that comes to mind. I sent you this meme today, or this GIF today, and I'll stand right by it. Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, after he escapes the prison and has both his hands in the air in the river looking to the sky, basically saying, I'm free. That's how I feel. Like, I need a break.
Well, at least they won all 3 games that did not matter this weekend in great fashion. And we have now approached into territory where, for the 5th time now in 11 seasons, the Seattle Mariners have technically missed the playoffs by 1 game, or close. Tiebreaker is this one. So it's technically 2 games this year, but it's only 1 game in the standings. And it is so close, because there's also only 1 game separating the 2 tiebreakers between the Mariners and the Royals this year. Doesn't that make you feel good? Oh, and here I have another fun stat for you about this Mariners 2024 season. The Mariners' expected win-loss this year is 54%.
One could only guess. They could only guess. Well, it's too bad the Mariners didn't have any games against the Royals that they could have won but actually lost. I mean, every game they lost, they just simply got way outplayed. Didn't favor them that day. Oh, wait, what's that? I'm actually hearing word they had an 8-0 lead in Kansas City in one of those games and lost. Oh, I must have forgotten about that. Oh, it almost slipped my mind. Did I put a social post out about it today? Maybe, but still, it must have slipped my mind.
And it almost didn't matter, Lyle, because on top of that, if that doesn't piss you off enough thinking about that part, so there's only 1 game separating the divisional records for both the Royals and the Mariners. The Royals, I believe, were 33-19, and the Mariners were 32-20. 1 game. Do you think there was a game in the division this year the Mariners could have won this year? And then if they were tied in records, the Mariners then would have had the tiebreaker, because then it would have been outside of the division record, which the Mariners would have held that tiebreaker. Are there any notable games against bad teams in the division this year, Lyle, that come to mind?
Like the final 9 games against, I don't know, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, where they went 1-8? No.
Which team swept the Angels this week? I'm struggling to remember. Which team did?
Oh, would that be the Astros?
No. Oh, no. This week.
Oh, the White Sox?
Yeah. 8 of 9 losses to that team. Yeah, there's a lot out there. In summary, the Mariners are where they are because they could not win games they probably should have won. And now the season's over before October has even started yet again. And again, we can bring up the stat 5 times in 11 seasons. It's remarkable that it's possible for one singular franchise to achieve this, but legitimately finishing a game out of the standings for the playoffs 5 times in a decade. It's
again,
nearly 50%.
Yeah. Like, again, as bad as those Angels games were, how you go 1-8 against the Angels is unreal. Like, the fact you're not 8-1 in those games against the Angels, or even 5-4. You're 5-4 in those games against the Angels. You're 4-5 in those games against the Angels, right? You'd win the division, right? Or would it have to be?
You'd miss out by a game.
Oh, so 5-4. So fine. You go 5-4 in those games against the Angels, you win the division. But you needed one more win to get into the playoffs, and I cannot get away. 8-0 in Kansas City, and you lost. 8-0. That's the whole season. Like again, you should have won way more games against the Angels, but that's the whole season. 8-0 in Kansas City.
And people wonder why Lyle and I send Joker videos back and forth so much. That's why. Right there.
Or a million Frank the Tank videos. Yeah,
you realize we thought about bringing out paper bags today. I'm just realizing that now as we're recording. Disappointing we don't actually have any paper bags available of just how the results turned out. If you want to put a smile on your face, dog, as we've officially concluded this 2024 season, does it put a smile on your face knowing the Mariners had an above-league average offense by WRC+?
No. Does it put a smile on your face?
A laugh. It's funny. And we're going to need to probably remind some of our listeners that WRC Plus is park adjusted, and the Mariners play in the worst hitters park in baseball. So for them to get to league average offensively is a lower bar than almost every other team. Or sorry, not almost, than every other team. They have to do less to reach the league average mark. So if you look at all like the slash lines, the runs scored, et cetera, all that stuff, like the Mariners are clearly worse than all of the teams around them offensively. Well, then based on their park, it's 102. Or sorry, it was 103. And you're sitting there thinking, 12th best offense in baseball? No. No way. So this is where someone will come to us and like, all right, nerds, this is why WRC Plus is flawed. And I'd be like, it's kind of hard to dispute because we're sitting here saying there's no way.
Like, I still think it's the best player stat in baseball because, like, especially when you're looking at offense. And we've talked to Goldie about this, and we've talked to Gary about this for why it really kind of encapsulates who a player is. Well, yeah, I'm starting to have some trust issues. Like, while we're in the trust tree here, I'm starting to have some trust issues with Team WRC Plus. When I see that last year the Mariners are 6th, and this year they're 12th, and watching what that offense did each of the last 2 years, and seeing that, yeah, I'm having a problem. Like, I'm having some real trust issues looking at those numbers.
And so it's like, all right, well, we just need to go by runs scored now. The Mariners need to go away from WRC Plus. Let's lead the league in runs. Well,
that'd be great.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do that.
So a hypothetical, Lyle, if a team finished the season 12th in WRC Plus and 2nd in ERA, where do you think they would finish?
You would hope 90 wins at least.
Well,
Maybe
again,
90...
the expected win-loss total was close to that.
Maybe 95 wins if you're the best rotation in baseball.
You'd think. But no, 85 wins. Mm-hmm. That's what that formula has gotten the Seattle Mariners this season.
Awesome. And again, I'll say it again. If they had Brash and Santos all year, this year probably looks different too. But you should have, like, this is such a disappointment of a season to the point where I think you can argue this is the most disappointing season the franchise has ever had. When you look at where expectations were and the fact that the American League was so down all year. It was a bad year in the American League. You had to do so little to get into the playoffs this year in the AL field. They still missed. With all that combined, expectations of the team, the roster that was on paper, and the entire play of the American League in 2024, to miss this playoff field is as disappointing a season as about you can draw up.
It's a pretty good way to articulate it. And we'll get to some of Jerry's comments here in a little bit. He does highlight, although not naming specifically in the article that Daniel Kramer wrote that we will pick mostly from, of some of those quotes that Jerry led when he held his impromptu end-of-season press conference on Saturday. But again, we'll get to that here in a little bit. the main thing that sticks out, and from what he said, is he feels like this team over the last 5 weeks showed what it was, and that they still believe in this core. So, what does the season look like? What does this season look like with this core, even with all of the offensive struggle this team has? If the two guys you mentioned, they have Matt Brash and Gregory Santos healthy for the whole season, how much different does it look like? Because one of the most underrated weaknesses of this Mariners team was the middle of the bullpen. How are you going to get leverage outs away from Andres Munoz? How are you going to find that? How are you going to shut down the 7th and 8th innings this season? A big reason a lot of those they lost all those games to the Angels, Lyle, is because they blew leads in the 7th and 8th inning because they couldn't hold it because they didn't have the guys at that spot to execute in those spots when they needed to. If you have Matt Brash and Gregory Santos, this core makes the playoffs, and not as many people are complaining. You and I aren't complaining. This isn't an end-of-season disappointment press conference. It's, the wild card series starts on Tuesday. Buckle up, Lyle. That's what we're talking about instead. So it's disappointing, but then you can also say Jerry kind of has a point. If those injuries don't happen, those aren't guys you can just snap your fingers and replace. They tried that with Ryan Stanek, and he gets traded at the deadline because they he didn't fit their philosophy.
Right. And they had other bullpen guys step up this year. You just have to think about what the bullpen could have been with Brash and Santos. If you had a full year of Colin Snyder the way you did, where he pitched so well. If you get Troy Taylor the final 6 to 8 weeks of the season where he turned into a leverage arm. So if you have all those guys lined up in the bullpen where if you have Munoz, Brash, Santos, Snyder, Taylor, and again, obviously, Gabe's our guy, but I can't get over how good he looked in April and how everything kind of changed in May, which was not too long before the injury, where he just wasn't the same the rest of the year because he missed a lot of time. They didn't really have a leverage lefty for a lot of this season. I mean, Sauce had a really good first half. I don't want to take that away from him. But seeing what Gabe did in April and then seeing what happened to him the rest of the year with that injury, that played a big factor too. Not that you need a lefty in the pen, but he was so good, and he looked so good in April compared to what he did in 2023. They just didn't have that version of Gabe Spire this year.
So that would have been, an enormously massive help. But then it also would have been great if you had a full season of what Julio did in the second half. And we're not talking about the bullpen troubles as much because, they score 30 more runs this season. They're also probably in the playoffs. If they just have that level of production from combined, can you get 30 more runs out of Julio and JP Crawford for this season? I would say there's a pretty easy scenario where you say yes, right? Yeah. I mean, and if you got those 30 runs out of those two, then again, the tone's completely different.
Yeah. I mean, JP went from what was an all-star caliber, even though he didn't make the all-star game last year, all-star caliber, top 10 to 12 bat in the American League type of season last year to a career worst. So, there's got to be some middle ground there you can get to with him and Julio. Yeah, and you would hope that progresses back to the mean next year.
Yeah, you would hope so.
And then, while we're just going to wrap up the season talk, and especially while we're on the topic of the bullpen, we're going to look back on Jimmy Garcia's Mariners tenure with for anybody that sees those Twitter videos that's ex-players' career highlights with this team, and it's just 5 seconds of the song Hot by Gunna with a black screen. That's Jimmy Garcia's Mariners tenure.
It's the Tony Snell 28 minutes no stats game.
Well, actually, no, he had stats because he blew leads in Detroit, and they lost those games, even though the offense did nothing in those games.
Well, you could say his contributions to the team. Yeah, you could say that. Again, good trade, terrible result, awful result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
but you're going to look back on his Mariners tenure. Again, it's going to be the 5 seconds, just black screen on Twitter with Hot by Gunna playing.
And then Jonathan Clase is going to be, an all-star.
That would be something.
that would really be something.
Well,
an all-star. Sure. They play in game. It's game 162 next year where the Mariners are a game out of a playoff spot, and the Blue Jays need to lose. Let's say the Blue Jays need to lose, and the team the Blue Jays are playing, let's say they're playing the Orioles, hits a ball over the wall, but Clase, who's playing somewhere in the outfield, robs the home run, puts up the no-fly zone. Mariners miss the playoffs because they traded for Jimmy Garcia to pitch. How many innings did he finish with? 6?
Something
Not many.
like that. Let's look it up. But
yeah, not very many.
Yeah. Jimmy Garcia with the Mariners here in 2024 made 10 appearances. He threw 9 innings.
Well, best 9 innings in Mariners history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, those blown leads to the Tigers did them wonders.
Yeah. I'm going to just try not to repeat the same phrase over and over and over again. So I'm going to have you read an ad so we can get to what Jerry says.
Fine. You don't want to say, fine, I'll say it. Only one franchise? I'll say it. Only one franchise. All right.
Just again, that's the slogan of this podcast.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to all the Jerry comments, some positive. Our friends over at Pagacci's Pub 85, because that's an awesome place to hang out. With baseball season for the Mariners being done, playoffs aren't done for Major League Baseball. In fact, they're just starting. You want to go watch some games over there. You want to go watch some football. You want to watch basketball, which is going to start here in a few weeks. Same with hockey. Head over there. It's an awesome time with your friends. There's darts, there's pool, there's great food, and awesome happy hour deals. Happy hours are 2 to 6 p.m. It's Monday through Friday. Drinks are $3 and $4. All that is all you need for a good time with your friends. So go head over there. It's Pagacci's Pub 85 over in Kirkland. All right, we ready to talk about some quotes? Basically, this season's makeshift end-of-season presser. You want to start there?
I would like to give the Mariners a lot of credit for cooking this up. I wouldn't have even thought this is how Jerry would have done it this season. So Ryan Divish put a tweet out sort of walking through his known history of the end-of-season press conference. He noted Mariners don't always do a formal press conference at the end of the year. Sometimes they'll make it up. It depends on when they get eliminated. For the Mariners, the last 3 years, they've either made the playoffs or they've been eliminated on the last series of the season. Therefore, they wait until the week after to do a press conference. This year, they're eliminated before the final series, so they could do this. But the fact they did it without telling anybody, and it was literally just who showed up to the park on Saturday got to ask Jerry questions, I feel like is really the funniest part of all of this. They didn't. I'm going to give them, again, a lot of credit. So, first of all, it was probably at least only half of what would have been at an announced press conference, right? Yeah. About half, maybe more, maybe less than that, maybe a third, depending on who shows up.
I'd say it was about half. It's all the usual media people that were there for it, but most of those media people don't usually have cameras, take a bunch of video. I mean, maybe Root took some video, but that's obviously going to be skewed what they show and don't show. There was none of the TV crews there or anything, so yeah.
And so if Jerry said something stupid, it's not going to get tweeted all over the place.
Yeah, well, in that regard, you can blame me. So, full disclosure, I was there this weekend. I was there Saturday. Number one, TJ's not making that up. Nobody knew this thing was happening. You ask around after that presser, it's was this set up? Did you know this was going to happen? No. Nobody knew it was happening. So it was very, very impromptu, as Adam Jude tweeted out. Impromptu media session. Number two, if you're mad there's no video, you can blame me. Sorry, guys. I didn't stand in that press conference, and I wasn't taking videos. Why? Because, well, first and foremost, the minor leaguers were there that day to get their awards, and there's a lot of minor league guys that we're pretty friendly with, and we wanted to catch up with, and we don't get to see all that often. We were talking to Brandon Garcia for a while on Saturday, which I know we've kind of hinted at it, but if you want another hint, he is most likely going to be an upcoming podcast guest at some point in the next few weeks. So if you want to hear from a guy that very well could throw big league innings this next year and was the Mariners minor league pitcher of the year this year, you'll probably hear him on here soon enough. We were talking to him. We were talking to Michael Morales. We were talking to some of the other guys we've gotten to know a little bit, obviously Colt, Felnine, Laz, Arroyo, who we talked to a few weeks ago in Everett, Michael Arroyo. So yeah, I'm going to be honest. I was more interested to do that because I was at that presser last year and I didn't walk away from it all that inspired. And I didn't feel like I was going to walk away from this presser all that inspired. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather sit and just kind of chop it up and catch up with a bunch of the minor league guys. So I did that. But if you are out there and you're mad that there was not video tweeted out, I guess in that sense it is my fault. Because usually in the regular media sessions on a regular basis, I'm usually the only one that tweets out clips from it. The other writers don't really have much of a need to tweet stuff out, like videos. So, yeah, blame me if you're mad.
And we can't confirm for certain that Jerry didn't say anything that has the potential to go viral. I feel like it would have at this point, but nobody mentioned anything because there's no video up. There's going to be no archive of it. Fans can't go back and listen to what Jerry Dipoto said. It's all just taken with the words of all the writers that wrote something about it. So what we have to go off of is what was written. And I'm sure that's how Jerry wants it, especially from some of the mess-ups they have had in this department in the future. So which quote should we start with, Lyle?
You pick. You've got them all lined up for us.
Okay. And I will say a disclaimer here. If you're expecting Jerry to say something groundbreaking and new that he's never said before, unfortunately, you've come to the wrong place. I feel like we have a pretty good idea whenever Jerry Dipoto does a media session, what kind of language comes out of his mouth and how he talks about his baseball team. Right? I would say it's pretty consistent.
Well, when he says new things, they seem to go viral. Had anybody ever heard 54% before last year?
No.
Which, by the way, fans were really in a great mood this weekend. I got to tell you, I'm walking around the ballpark, and in the span of 24 hours, I see multiple 54% jerseys, and I saw multiple shirts that said sell, but not A's fans wearing sell jerseys. Mariners fans wearing sell shirts. So, yeah, people were in a great mood this weekend, I got to tell you.
Okay, let's start off with a banger of a quote. And this is very similar to what he said about his team last year when they missed the playoffs. Quote, "These last 5 weeks have shown we are not far off."
Like, by a technicality, he's right, I guess, because if they play the way they played the last 5 weeks for an entirety of a season, then yes, you make the playoffs. But like, what about the first 5 months of the season? Like, does that count for anything? They didn't look like that then.
You could do that for any stretch of the season. You could say from mid-April to mid-June we looked like a playoff team. Like, yeah, they did. They had a 10-game lead in first. They were a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're right. By a technicality sense, they won 61% of their games in the last 5 weeks since Dan Wilson took over. The problem is you can't sell that that's going to happen all season long. You can always claim small samples can extrapolate for a full season, but, that's not really a thing. And they faced, let's look at the clear playoff teams they faced in this stretch, Lyle. They lost 2-3 to the Yankees. They split with the Padres. And then they won 2-3 against the Astros. So it's like a wash. They're about 500. It's not like it was not enough to sit there and say, yeah, like this is it. This is a playoff team. I think the bigger issue is, and I think Jerry has every right to be confident in his team, is that people don't want to hear you say that you were right in how this roster was put together based on the result of the season. Because that's essentially what he's saying in that. He said, I think the idea of this roster was correct, even though they missed the playoffs.
And again, while you imagine Julio's going to be, actually, I have my own doubts about it. While the organization believes Julio's going to be more consistent next year, even if that happens, and even if JP gets back to his career norm next year, you're still banking on other things to happen all over again. I'm not saying they can't happen, but is Victor Robles guaranteed to carry this over? We hope so, but it's not a guarantee. Is Luke Raley going to put up another season like this again next year? You hope. It's no guarantee. Those two guys are not proven enough big leaguers to bank in on the fact that they should have those type of seasons repeated again next year, especially when JP's a proven big leaguer. Everybody figured he took this real step forward last year, and then it came falling back to earth in 2024.
And that's not even accounting for pitching regression, which will almost certainly happen.
Or, heaven forbid, injuries in the rotation.
Right. The other thing about this quote is I say far off from what? Because you know what they're far off from? Being a World Series team.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say they're pretty far off from being that. Playoff team, sure, not that far off. A World Series team, which everyone wants to see, yeah, they're far off from that.
Their vision of being not that far off is not that far off from sneaking into the playoffs and just hoping your rotation carries you. That's what their vision of not far off is. They have never built a contender, a true, real contender in our lifetimes. Even when they made it in 22, that team is the closest thing you could say in our lifetimes to being a real contender, but that team had plenty of flaws.
Mm-hmm. So, that's really where the beef I have with that statement. But it ultimately just lines up with everything else Jerry Dipoto says. This is the same guy who said last year was a success of a year. He's going to beam positivity about his franchise, and if he's going to continue to lead them going forward, He is going to speak up the job he has done. That's what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Next quote. Not really a quote, just a statement. They're not trading from the rotation, he says. Plan Z.
Great. Are you going to add offense otherwise? I hope. I don't want to trade one of those pitchers. I want that rotation intact in 2025 because that gives you the best chance to win. But how are you going to improve this offense? That is my question. If it's not going to be trading, how are you going to do it? And just running back this roster ain't going to fly with just about anybody.
And that's what he made it sound like. He made it sound like a majority of this roster will be back for next season. He even went, specifics. He said the outfield's going to be the same, which I think is fine. I think these are about as good of an outfield, unless you sign Tony Taters, of course, but we have our doubts they're going to do that. That this is about as good as it would get in the outfield for next season in Randy, Julio, and Victor Robles. Okay, that's fine. Did mention they need to move, shuffle around the infield a little bit, and they need to add pieces on the infield. That's fine. He didn't rule out trading minor league pitchers. The Mariners have plenty of those, and we love our guys down in the minor leagues, but if there's something the Mariners have a copious amount of right now, Lyle, it is near major league starters. So if you're not going to trade the big league starters in your rotation, you can trade the near big league starters in AAA and in AA. And some teams, while you might not get as much back, you could trade two of them instead of trading one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is a possibility, but how much are those guys going to get you back? Are those getting you back real bats? I don't know.
They're not going to get you back as much as if you were to trade one of your starters in your rotation. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That part stinks.
And again, how many more projects can you take on at this point? They're in a window to contend. They need real proven guys.
But they are probably going to take on a project. We just need to accept that. That's how it's going to be next year. So let's get to the infield part. So J.P. Crawford's going to be the shortstop next year. That's expected. They want to see Luke Raley play more at first base. That, okay.
Can I just interject on that?
Sure.
I'm not saying Luke Raley doesn't deserve as a bats, because he does, but penciling him in there, I think that's a mistake. Because Churchill tweeted this today, and I totally agree with him. This is how the Mariners should operate their outfield and DH spot next year. Robles is almost always in right. Julio is almost always in center. What you do is you have Randy and Raley split time between one's in left field most games, one's at DH, where usually the two of them are split between those two positions. Or if a lefty's on the mound in a game where you don't want Raley hitting against a lefty, Randy's in left, Garver DH is in that role, because we know the one thing he did this year is hit lefties. And then that totally frees up first base to go make a real acquisition for a proven first baseman. That's what they should do. And by the way, Luke Raley looked extremely uncomfortable at times playing first base this year. Maybe they think an offseason of work would have him more comfortable, but just leave him in the outfield and at DH and go get a real first baseman. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
But that would require spending money. Which they said they're going to do. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So right now he says Raley is going to spend some time at first base, which sounds like they're going to platoon first base. At least right now, here on September 29th, using that verbiage, that's what it sounds like. So now they need an upgrade at second base, and they need an upgrade at third base. What exactly that looks like, I'm not entirely sure.
So that means, really quickly, one more thing at first base. That means if it's going to be Raley, then your platoon is either you hope Tyler Locklear has an awesome offseason, a great spring training, and he makes the roster out of camp to face the lefties, or you bring back Justin Turner, who says he wants to play another year, and he platoons over at first base.
And he said he'd love to come back to Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this point on Twitter today, which is the Mariners have let too many clubhouse guys go, and it has not worked out positively for the roster at all. Santana, right. Gino, and now Justin Turner, who the guys all say they like. So I would say if there's a clear option at first base, clear is the wrong word. I would say if there's a favorite for a platoon option at first base, Justin Turner sounds like it. Won't be that expensive. He's making like $19 million this year. He's not making $19 million to be a platoon right-handed hitting first baseman next year. But based on how we imagine the Mariners would spend, seems like an easy way out. if they're putting Rayleigh at first base. They could reevaluate sometime in this offseason, but as of right now, that's how it sounds. So second base and third base. That leaves those options open. Payroll, Lyle. It's going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to read the quote?
I can hear the excitement beaming out of your... out of.
I was going to say, do you have the quote, or is it just payrolls going up?
Mariners' payroll is roughly $145 million. Dipoto confirms that the number will increase next year, but also estimated a bulk of the upside will be via in-house raises, many of them through arbitration.
However, if you read what Divish tweeted out, he said they'll also be looking outside the organization. And he said that they're going to be looking to add, they're going to be looking to add some proven guys on the infield. And when I hear that paired with payroll is going to go significantly up and that they have the resources. Oh, what's this? I'm actually getting a call from Baltimore, Maryland. Yeah, I am. I'm getting a call from Baltimore, Maryland. It's the Ravens Sunday Night Football crew and the ever so loyal Ravens fans who must have just gotten word of this Jerry Dipoto quote in this presser because they're reacting pretty passionately to it. Can you believe it?
He's begging the official to come over and talk to him, and instead, he got a flag. He's saying, I'm trying to call timeout.
That's the loudest manure chant I've ever heard.
Thank you, Alan Chris, and thank you, Ravens fans, for having our back. Yeah, when I see Christian Walker...
the Ravens fans would be sticking up for the Seattle Mariners? I mean,
woo!
Hats off.
Shout out the bank. Shout out the bank in Baltimore. Yeah. When I see Christian Walker physically run out to first base on opening day, I'll believe it. What on earth have they given us reason to believe that they are going to go out and acquire true impact free agent hitters? Let's go through it again.
But here's the thing. He never said that. He just said the payroll is going to go up. And he said they will spend outside. But they said that last year, too, and payroll went up all of $5 million. Technically, it's true.
Yeah, because if you look at what they're going to have to do in arbitration, Cal's going to get a ton for all the games he caught this year in the season he had. Logan's going to get around 8. George is going to get about 5. Randy's going to go from 8 to 12. Julio's contract goes from 12 to 20 or something like that. Who am I forgetting? Oh, that's everybody. Those are the main guys that are going to get big money in arbitration. When you factor all that stuff in, yeah, payroll's going to go up. So... sure, payroll's going to go up. Congratulations. Do they want us to clap it up for the fact that they're not going to trade Randy Arozarena like Divish had potentially thrown out to us 3 months after trading for him? No. Nobody's going to give you a round of applause for not trading a guy you just traded for. When your offense isn't good enough, you need to go add more impact from outside the organization to add to this core you already have. And just paying guys in arbitration ain't it.
And continuing to label this as a contention window means you don't just get to balk at when the money increases, because this is what you expect. You need to, hedge against it on what happens when all of your players who you anticipate will become good players get more expensive. That's what happens. Happened last year, and it's going to happen this year as well. They saw what happened last year when they knew some of this was coming, and they still tried to add some money and add players. It didn't work out. Okay, so how are you going to change that for this next year where you do have to win? Winning is a non-negotiable. There's one other thing you mentioned that was tweeted out, that Root Sports won't be as big of an impact on the spending cycle this offseason.
I guess, and you mentioned this before we hit record, but maybe all that means is they're not going to be surprised by it this year. They just know it is what it is at this point, rather than last year when everybody was surprised by it.
I'm gonna say it's just surprise. He knows the limitations that network would bring them this offseason. It's not going to be a surprise on NHL opening week when Xfinity pulls Root Sports from its normal tier and puts it in its top tier. That's not going to be just a gotcha this offseason. No, they very well know where Root Sports is this offseason and can plan accordingly around it, as opposed to, Jerry, I don't think thinking that RSN money would be going away last offseason. I don't think. That's the impression I think we got, that stuff like that caught them off guard. And I can't imagine there's much else to catch them off guard RSN-wise this offseason. So that's how I think about that. Not that, Root Sports had a banger year, there's going to be a lot more money to spend. No. People did the cable have a resurgence this year? I don't think so.
No. So Divish's quote on all this, by the way, not the Root thing, but just one more thing about the payroll thing, is he said, Dipoto doesn't believe team will have to create payroll flexibility. He acknowledged that the payroll will go up significantly with in-house players. I think that means arbitration. But then also said it will go up beyond those expected raises. So yeah, to your point, TJ, after all the arbitration things, if they bring in one more player that costs almost nothing to be some utility guy, platoon guy, whatever, yes, then by the definition of the statement, payroll will have gone up. It will not be inspiring, but it will have gone up. Yeah.
So see what I mean when it's like Jerry essentially just says the same thing every year. Like we could just parse it back to past things he said about all of this and things that have happened in the past that will probably happen again this offseason.
Yeah. Like we'll tell you what we think, people. You want to ask us. I've said this for weeks now, and I still believe it. I think they're doing absolutely nothing this winter. Sure, they will pay their guys in arbitration. They're not going to trade anybody away. Again, I'm not giving them a round of applause for that. But if you were talking about going outside the organization and getting true impact for this roster, I think they're doing absolutely nothing. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But I'm pretty confident, and I wish I wasn't. I am pretty confident on the idea that they are doing nothing come this winter in free agency to improve the roster from outside the organization from where it already was. If they prove me wrong, great. I'm sold that nothing's happening this winter.
Let's get to the last thing he said. And this should come at a shock to no one that they're going to try and refine their hitting approach and find something that... Excuse me.
Uh-oh. TJ's already sick of no Mariners baseball. He said he was ready to be done, and now he's having withdrawals.
No, we started talking about the offense, and I started losing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Again, it's just hard to watch, so... So Jerry says they need to refine their messaging on hitting at T-Mobile Park. Great. It sounds like Edgar had a positive impact on that when they brought him in for the final 5 weeks of the season. Jerry made it an emphasis that they were going to be creative to try and retain Edgar Martinez for next year. Now, I doubt he's going to be the full-time hitting coach. One of the things that is mentioned often that he's not going to want to travel around everywhere. He's not going to want to go on the 162-game grind of the full season. But Jerry says on the record, he's a very important part of this offense's turnaround, and we want to have him available as much as possible. So they're going to get creative with him, but they're also just going to find a way to message hitting at T-Mobile Park better, which I think is great. Because if you think of how they approached it this season, it literally could not have been any worse.
So maybe in that scenario, Edgar is there for all the home games, but they'll hire another hitting coach to be there all the time, and he'll travel on the road, and he'll help relay the same message that the group organizationally has and that Edgar also agrees with, and that's who's implementing it on the road. Maybe it'll look something like that. So, here's an example, right? Ichiro's not on the coaching staff, but Ichiro's at almost all the home games. You see him out there with the players, and he's out there throwing, and he's out there running and doing all this stuff. Maybe it'll look something like that. It's just Edgar has more of a defined role where he's the hitting coach and is at all the home games, but just won't travel on the road. Maybe he would travel to like 1 or 2 road series, period, if they think there's a series they really need his help with something, or if they're in a rut and they feel like he can help them get out of something on the road, or maybe, if they made the playoffs, then fine, he'd travel for the playoffs, but mostly he's just at home. Maybe it would look something like that.
That's what I think. That sounds right. And I think it's the right decision for the Mariners because the numbers are really undeniable. We can trash on a stance on batting average, home runs, and RBIs all we want, but the results speak pretty clearly, Lyle, of what he's done. They've been the third best offense in baseball since he's taken over by WRC+. That's not insignificant. I think that's a real number that they might not be able to maintain third best all season, but an impactful offense that can score runs consistently for a good pitching staff. Yeah, I think Edgar can do that. And Adam Jude wrote a really good piece earlier this week, sort of detailing the differences of how Edgar approached hitting versus how Brant Brown did. And just of how it resonates with the players, I recommend go reading that piece, by the way, so you get a little bit more insight into what I'm talking about. But just the connection he was able to have with some of these players, especially Julio this season, and showing what kind of impact that can make, where getting the best out of Julio Rodriguez is in the best interest of this offense's success. So if that's Edgar's job to do, and he can do that better than anybody, then I think it's well worth getting creative.
Look, if the players are bought into his messaging and they feel like he helped, that's the most important thing. So yeah, keep him around. So sure. Obviously, the Brant Brown thing didn't work. So stick with what worked. Even if we say batting average is dumb.
Yeah. So that's about all Jerry's quotes. Was there anything else he said that you wanted to touch on?
I think we hit on all the big points. I guess I wouldn't know. I didn't stand in the press conference for the half hour, but I was going to ask, did anybody ask about the batter's eye specifically when they talked about offensive change?
I don't think anyone mentioned anything about it. I didn't see a tweet.
Well, that's too bad. I would have been interested, but
well, batter's eye didn't really hurt him the last 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's true. Still would have been curious, but who knows?
But then again, Jerry can't excavate the batter's eye. I think that might be above him.
That's fair, but he can have a say.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he can. He'd probably go ask Edgar what he thinks. Is this the problem?
It's
and
fair.
you know what Edgar probably said? No. Just need to hit the ball.
Does that wrap up our end of season pod, or is there anything else we need to get to?
Yeah, I mean, this pod ending is just like the season ending. It just falls flat, just like that.
Well, buckle up, people. Get some rest, reset, recharge. I certainly know the two of us need it, although we'll keep podcasting, obviously, on our normal schedule. But enjoy the playoffs while other teams are playing in it, not named the Mariners, because I think this offseason is going to send us through a just spin cycle again. So get your rest in before we all get put through the ringer.
It's good. It's a good idea. I am hoping it is an entertaining offseason, but not for the reasons it was last year. I would really like to get proven wrong from some of the messaging we've come to understand of what could happen. I would like the opposite of that. I would like the Mariners to find a way this offseason to put a good product on the field next season with a lot of their core players and go make the damn playoffs. No more excuses. There are no more excuses for next season. Mm-hmm. We said that last offseason, and someone lost their job because of it. Same thing applies now.
Yeah. Actually, 3 people lost their job because of it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, well, one of the head figures lost their job.
Right. Exactly. Again, I'm sorry. I know we try to be the positive podcast, but if you want to know what we really think, I think they're making 0 significant additions this winter. I wish that wasn't true. That is what I believe. And I very much hope we are proven wrong and the organization goes out and proves everybody wrong. So we're going to find out. In the meantime, look, while it sucks the Mariners aren't in it, the MLB playoffs are still very fun regardless. So we can all watch those. We're going to keep podcasting on our normal schedule. So our next episode now, since we put this one out Monday, will be Friday, and now we'll be back on our totally normal schedule with Wednesdays and Fridays. So we'll be recapping the year. We'll be giving out some position grades. We'll be trying to think of some fun episodes we can do, too, to kind of make things lighthearted. And then when the offseason gets going, we'll all be going right with it. So obviously the season ends, but we're not done doing stuff. We're not done making content. We're not done podcasting. So keep sticking around because we'll be talking. Hopefully you'll be listening. So with that, that'll just about wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer Podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Please make sure to download. Please rate and review 5 stars. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. It's free. It's right in front of you. And it's a huge, huge way for you guys to support the channel. So make sure you do that. Leave the video a like, drop a comment. And on social media, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.